Imagine learning that the stories you grew up with about heroes and glory in U.S. history might not tell the whole truth. You've probably been taught about the founding fathers as the ultimate champions of freedom and democracy. But were they really the unblemished heroes we think they were? The reality is much more complicated, and as you dive deeper, you'll discover that many of these revered figures were also slave owners, raising uncomfortable questions about their commitment to liberty and equality. Picture this: the ink is barely dry on the Declaration of Independence, a document proclaiming freedom, yet many of its signers own slaves. This stark contradiction between their words and actions challenges the narrative of unqualified heroism that we've been taught. The ideals they espoused, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, often conflicted with their personal practices. You might wonder how this duality can exist in the same individuals who are celebrated as the architects of a new nation. Understanding this complexity isn't just about re-examining history, it's about recognizing the nuances that define our collective past. By peeling back the layers of these historical figures, you can see that history is often filled with shades of gray, rather than simple black and white. The reality is that the legacy of the founding fathers is not just about their achievements, but also about the moral contradictions that shaped their lives. As you reflect on these revelations, consider how this understanding alters your perspective on the heroes of American history. The story of the founding fathers is just one piece of a larger puzzle that reveals the complexities of U.S. history. This journey into the past encourages you to question the narratives we've accepted without scrutiny, opening the door to a richer, more informed understanding of what it truly means to celebrate history. With this new lens, you'll be prepared to explore the next chapter in the story of America's past and its many contradictions. What did manifest destiny really mean for Native Americans? The belief in manifest destiny, the idea that American settlers were destined to expand across North America, drove the nation's growth. While many celebrate this era as a time of opportunity and exploration, it came at a devastating cost to countless Native American tribes. The reality is that this expansion was not merely about land acquisition. It led to the displacement, suffering, and death of entire communities. Consider the Trail of Tears, where thousands of Native Americans were forcibly removed from their ancestral lands. Families were torn apart, and many perished from disease and starvation along the way. The glorification of this era often overlooks the violent conflicts and broken treaties that characterized American expansion. While settlers may have viewed their journey as a noble quest, for Native Americans it was a struggle for survival. You might think that with such a traumatic history, we would have learned from these mistakes. However, the celebration of manifest destiny in history books often glosses over the violence and injustice faced by indigenous peoples. By exploring these impacts, you reveal the darker side of America's growth and the sacrifices made in the name of progress. This narrative invites you to reflect on whose stories are being told and whose voices are being silenced in the annals of history. It's crucial to understand that the legacy of manifest destiny still affects indigenous communities today. The long-lasting consequences of land loss, cultural erasure, and systemic inequality continue to resonate, challenging the idea that America's expansion was a purely heroic endeavor. By acknowledging these truths, you can better appreciate the complexities of U.S. history and the ongoing struggles faced by marginalized groups. As you consider the consequences of manifest destiny, think about the lessons we can draw from this period. How do we ensure that history doesn't repeat itself? Understanding these narratives not only enriches your knowledge, but also empowers you to engage in discussions about justice, equity, and the responsibilities of the present towards the past. Was the Civil War truly a fight for freedom for all? While many celebrate the Civil War as a noble crusade against slavery, the reality is much more complicated. Most people think of the war as a clear-cut battle between good and evil, but the truth reveals a landscape of conflicting motives and struggles. Many individuals fought not for the liberation of enslaved people, but for states' rights or economic interests, casting doubt on the moral clarity often associated with the conflict. Consider the Emancipation Proclamation, a pivotal moment in American history. It declared freedom for enslaved people in Confederate-held territory, but it didn't free all enslaved individuals. This selective liberation highlights the complexity of the Union's motives. President Abraham Lincoln himself was initially more concerned about preserving the Union than about abolishing slavery. Understanding this layered reality challenges the simplistic hero narrative surrounding the war. The aftermath of the Civil War, particularly during the Reconstruction era, reveals further complexities. Many hoped for a new beginning, a chance for true equality, yet faced fierce resistance from those who wanted to maintain the status quo. The promises of Reconstruction were met with violent backlash, as groups like the Ku Klux Klan emerged to undermine efforts toward civil rights. This turbulent period reminds us that the struggle for equality did not end with the war, it merely evolved. This dual narrative invites you to question the traditional heroic portrayal of the Civil War. It emphasizes that the fight for civil rights has been an ongoing struggle, with victories often overshadowed by setbacks. By recognizing the diverse motivations behind the war, you can better appreciate the historical context that shaped the fight for freedom and equality in the United States. As you reflect on the Civil War, consider the lessons it offers about the complexities of moral choices in history. The struggle for justice is not always straightforward, and understanding these nuances experiences can lead to deeper insights into the ongoing fight for equality today. This perspective encourages you to engage with history critically, acknowledging both its triumphs and its failures as part of a broader narrative that shapes the American experience. How has America's involvement in foreign wars shaped its moral standing? When you think about U.S. interventions, the immediate images that often come to mind are those of bravery and freedom, but the reality is far more complicated. Many people believe that American actions abroad are rooted in a commitment to justice, yet the truth reveals a much murkier picture filled with questionable motives and devastating consequences. Take, for example, the Vietnam War. Initially framed as a fight against communism, it escalated into a conflict that claimed millions of lives. The U.S. justified its presence in Vietnam as a noble endeavor, yet many civilians suffered horrific consequences. The war left deep scars, not just on Vietnam but also on the American conscience. You might wonder, what did we learn from this conflict? The answer is troubling. Then consider the more recent wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Again, the U.S. presented its involvement as a mission to liberate oppressed peoples and combat terrorism. However, as the years unfolded, the rationale for intervention shifted dramatically, often obscured by a narrative that emphasized heroism. The reality for many Iraqis and Afghans was one of chaos, suffering, and instability, raising serious questions about the effectiveness and morality of American actions. The examination of these conflicts also shows how notions of heroism and freedom can sometimes be weaponized to justify actions that lead to more harm than good. This duality invites you to think critically about the narratives we consume regarding foreign policy. It's crucial to ask, who benefits from these stories and at what cost? As you reflect on America's role in global conflicts, it's vital to recognize that history can repeat itself when the lessons learned are ignored. By understanding the complexities of these interventions, you're better equipped to grasp the ongoing struggles faced by those impacted by war. This awareness not only enriches your understanding of history, but also challenges you to think about the broader implications of American actions on the world stage. Now you see that U.S. history is filled with complexities and contradictions that challenge the heroic narratives we often hear. You've uncovered the realities behind the myths, highlighting that history is not just about celebrating achievements, but also acknowledging failures and injustices. This exploration has revealed how the stories of the Founding Fathers, manifest destiny, the Civil War, America's global interventions, and social inequalities create a rich tapestry of history that goes beyond the surface. Reflecting on the myth of the Founding Fathers, it's essential to recognize that while they are celebrated for their roles in forming a new nation, many were deeply flawed individuals. Their ideals of liberty were often overshadowed by their practices, such as slavery, complicating their legacies. This duality invites us to question how we honor historical figures while also grappling with their moral shortcomings. Moving to Manifest Destiny, you learned that this belief was not merely about expansion, but came with devastating consequences for Native American tribes. The romanticized notion of westward expansion often ignores the violent realities and broken treaties that defined this era. By examining these impacts, you are challenged to reconsider the narrative surrounding America's growth and the cost associated with it. The American Civil War, frequently depicted as a noble fight against slavery, reveals another layer of complexity. Many individuals fought for reasons beyond abolishing slavery, such as states' rights and economic interests. The Emancipation Proclamation itself was limited in scope, highlighting the mixed motives behind the conflict. Understanding this dual narrative is crucial as it emphasizes the ongoing struggles for civil rights that persisted even after the war ended. When analyzing America's involvement in global conflicts, you discovered that the justifications for interventions, such as those in Vietnam and Iraq, often shifted. The consequences of these actions led to significant suffering and instability, raising questions about the true motives behind the pursuit of freedom. This understanding prompts you to reflect on how history can repeat itself if the lessons learned are ignored. Finally, addressing economic and social inequalities sheds light on the myth of the American dream. While many celebrate this ideal, it's clear that discrimination and inequality have historically hindered access to opportunities for numerous individuals. Analyzing these disparities invites a critical examination of the narratives that shape our understanding of history. In conclusion, the complexities of U.S. history serve as a reminder that heroism is not a straightforward narrative. It's a multifaceted story that requires us to confront uncomfortable truths. Next time you reflect on U.S. history, remember to consider the hidden stories that reveal a fuller picture of the American experience. If you enjoyed this epic journey, please subscribe to our channel for more thrilling historical tales. Don't miss out on new videos. Hit the notification bell to stay updated.